Shabbos Daf Samach Vez is a very long daf. It takes us to the next Mishnah and beyond. So until the Mishnah, we're going to conclude a discussion about Kameyas, amulets, and whether or not they have Kedusha, whether they have holiness. Then the Mishnah will discuss the halachos of things which are forbidden to be worn in the street, Mideoraisa, that is, they are not considered to be ornaments or anything at all, and therefore it is forbidden to wear it not only Midirabanan because you might take it off, it's forbidden to wear it even Mideoraisa if you don't take it off. The Gemara will identify a lot of these terms and discuss some of them, and then it'll launch into a discussion of what the Jewish people were doing before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and what terrible sins they were involved in, which led to its destruction. There will be some agarata, which will fill the length of the page. So let us begin over here. We're in the middle of a discussion as to whether or not Kameyas, which contain psukim and names of God, are holy or not. And the question was, are they allowed to be brought into the bathroom? So we had said that they're allowed to be brought into the bathroom only if they're covered with leather. But really, they are holy. So the Gemara says that that's not true. If they were really holy, covering them with leather would not help. And the proof is that tefillin are not allowed to be brought into the bathroom, and tefillin contain parshios, they contain parchments with psukim in it, but those are hidden inside the leather covering of the boxes, and yet they're still not to be brought into the bathroom. So you see, leather coverings don't help to keep something from the prohibition of being put into the bathroom. So Gemara says, no, it's not true. Really, if you're covered by leather, you can be brought into the bathroom. The problem with the issue with tefillin is that tefillin have a shin pressed into the outside surface, and that shin counts as one of the names of Hashem. Like Abaye says, it's halacha l'Moshe miSinai, and it forms the name of Hashem with the shin together with the dalid, which is formed by the straps, the ritzuos of the sharosh, and the yud, which is formed by the ritzuos of the shoyad, the hand tefillin. Those three together, the shin, the dalid, and the yud, form a name of Hashem, and that's why you can't bring it into the bathroom. Okay, so that concludes our discussion of Kameyas. And the Gemara now goes back to the previous Mishnah, and the Gemara wants to know what these various terms are, which we defined when we learned the Mishnah as being different pieces of armor. So the Gemara defines what they are. Shiryon, the Gemara says, is the main armor which covers the body. Kasta is a helmet. Rav says that refers to the leather head covering that goes underneath the metal helmet. Magafayim is the boots. The Gemara says refers to the iron leggings that were worn as part of the coat of armor. Okay, now we get to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah lists a number of items which can't be worn in the street at all. Mideoraisa. Now, if it can't be worn in Daraisa, that means that it's not ornamental, or else it would be an accessory which serves the body and would be permitted to wear it. The only reason that it's being worn is in order to transport it from place to place. Well, it also has to be the normal manner of wearing it. If it's an abnormal way of wearing things, if it's an abnormal way of transporting something, then it would be considered abnormal, and one is not violating the Daraisa laws by doing abnormal malachos. So let's see, the list over here, this is not complete agreement. There are two machloks in here. So the first thing on the list is a needle. A woman can't stick a needle into her clothing in order to transport the needle from place to place. This is referring to a needle with an eye that can be used for sewing. It's not ornamental, it's just transporting, therefore it's asur deraisa. Now as far as rings, so she can't wear a ring that has a seal on it. That's a man's ring. If she wears that in the street, that's just transportation, that's carrying, and that is asur deraisa. She also can't wear a kulyar. The Gemara will describe that. It's a pin of sorts. She can't wear a kavelas, which is a bundle of spices, and she cannot wear a tzloichis shel palyotoin, which is a flask of some type of oil. Now, these last two are machlokas. Rabbi Meir says that this is asur deraisa, and the Chachamim say it's only asur derabanan because they are considered ornamental. They are a bundle of spices and a flask of fragrant oil. Those two things are a machlokas. Okay, now the Gemara first begins by discussing the difference between men's ornaments and women's ornaments. And the Gemara says that Ula says that what a man can wear, a woman can't necessarily wear, and what a woman can wear, a man cannot necessarily wear. What's considered to be ornamental for one is not ornamental for the other, and therefore for the other, it's carrying deraisa. So the Gemara says that. You see, Ula holds that just because a woman could wear it doesn't mean a man could wear it. Just because a man could wear it, it doesn't mean that it's considered okay for a woman to wear. But that's not true. Because if Yosef says that you're allowed to wear, any person is allowed to wear sackcloth because shepherds wear sackcloth. It's normal for them to wear, so therefore anybody can wear it. So you see that if it's normal for some people, it's normal for other people. Why should there be a difference? If it's normal for men, it should be okay for women and vice versa. So Gemara says, Rav Yosef says no, because men and women are considered to be two separate groups entirely. They're considered to be two separate nations, the Gemara says. And therefore what applies to one doesn't apply to the other. If you want to say that something is worn by one group and therefore can be worn by others, it has to be within the same general group. Men and women are considered separate groups. So now the Gemara says, hold on a second, how could that be? Abaya asks. There's a Mishnah that says that if you find tefillin in the field, you're allowed to bring them in. How are you allowed to bring them into the private domain is forbidden. So you're allowed to wear them in. Let's say you found 5 pairs, you put on one, bring it in, take it off, go out, get the next one. And the Gemara says that both men and women are allowed to do this. Now if men's clothing or ornaments or accessories are not considered to be wearing when women put them on, so tefillin is a men's thing, because tefillin is a mitzvah to say Shema Gram. It's a positive commandment that can only be done during certain times. It can't be done at night, and it can't be done on Shabbos. And therefore it's not a mitzvah that applies to women. It's not anything for women. It should be carrying for women even if they wear it. So according to you, Rabbi Yosef, that you're telling me that what men can wear doesn't necessarily make it a normal thing for women to wear. So how come women are allowed to wear tefillin in order to bring it in? So Gemara says this is Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds that women are obligated in tefillin, and therefore there's no problem. He holds that tefillin can be worn at night, and tefillin can be worn on Shabbos, and therefore women are not exempt in any way, and therefore they're allowed to bring it in. But actually the truth is that had it been a different Tana who would hold that women are not obligated in tefillin, then it would have said that women cannot wear tefillin in the public domain. Now, the Gemara asks, how can you tell me that wearing a ring is violating the Issa of carrying? It's not a normal way of transporting a ring. For a woman who wears a signet ring and a man who wears a purely ornamental ring without a signet, both of them, it's not an adornment. But it's certainly not a normal way of carrying, and therefore it's an abnormal activity, and it shouldn't be considered an Isser D'Oraisa. So Gemara says, no, a woman sometimes wears a ring with a signet if she's in a position of authority. She's overseeing certain things, so she has to wear a signet ring, and therefore it's not a problem. So Gemara says, okay, that explains a woman wearing a signet ring. What about a man wearing an ornamental ring? You haven't answered the question. So the Gemara says, okay, I'll give you a different answer, and the truth is that it is normal to carry a ring by wearing it on your finger. Sometimes a man will give his wife his ring to put away, and she'll put it on her finger instead of holding it in her hand. And sometimes a woman will give her husband the ring to take to the shop to fix, and they'll also put it on his finger. So it is a normal way of carrying a ring in the street. Okay, we now refer back to the Mishnah, which discussed a kulyar and a kovelis. The Gemara will define these two things, and then the Gemara will expand on the machlokas about them in the Mishnah by adding a brisa that has a third opinion, and then the Gemara will have some conflicting sources about that third opinion, which the Gemara will resolve and learn halacha from it. So first of all, what is a kulyar and a kovelis? So a kulyar, the Gemara says, is a pin used to close the ends of a woman's clothing, the garment, a chaluk. And a kovelis is a bundle of aromatic spices which were hung around the neck to cover up a foul odor that a person might have. It was worn only by women in the rare event that they had a problem like that, as the Gemara will say soon. So Gemara says that there's a brisa that has three opinions about it. There's Rabbi Meir who says that if she wears this spice packet, this fragrant packet, it's an Isser D'Oraisa. There's a Chacham who says it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, and there's Rabbi Elazar who says it's mutter. What's a machlokas? Yes. So Rabbi Meir holds that it is carrying. It's not a normal thing to wear. It's not ornamental, and it's carrying. The Rabbanan hold it's considered an ornament, and therefore it's not carrying, but we're concerned she may take it off to show off to her friend because it is ornamental. And Rabbi Elazar holds, show it off. Why would she show it off? It shows that she has a bad natural odor, and therefore it's embarrassing, so she's not going to show it to anybody. So now the Gemara says we have a conflicting source as to what Rabbi Eliezer holds. This brisa we just quoted says that Rabbi Eliezer holds that it is permitted to wear it. But we have a different brisa which concerns this packet of aromatic spices or a flask of aromatic oils, and in the other brisa, Rabbi Eliezer says that it's not aser daraisa, which implies that it is aser midabanan. So in this is not a problem. Really, Rabbi Eliezer holds that it is mutter completely. However, it depends who you're comparing him to. If you're comparing him to the Chachamim who said it's aser darabanan, so we'll say he says that it's permitted. If you're comparing him to Rabbi Meir who says it's aser daraisa, he'll say it's not aser daraisa. That is conflicting with Rabbi Meir's opinion, but he really goes further than that and says that it's even aser, that it's even mutter entirely. The Gemara quotes a brisa which spells this out. The brisa is missing a piece which the Gemara will have to add. The brisa says that Rabbi Meir says you're not allowed to carry a key in the hand on Shabbos, and Rabbi Eliezer says that you're not. It's not aser daraisa if you wear a packet of aromatic spices or a flask of aromatic oil. The Gemara says, what's he talking about? Who said anything about that in this Mishnah? The Gemara says, case missing a piece. Rabbi Meir said there are three things which one is not allowed to carry, and it is an Isser D'Oraisa if he or she will, and that is a key, a packet of aromatic spices, and a flask of oil. And Rabbi Eliezer says, no, it's not an Isser D'Oraisa, but really he goes further and he says that in the case of the spice and the oil, it is, well, he only argues on those two at all. The key he agrees is an Isser D'Oraisa, but he says that those two are actually mutter, even though in this case he only argues with Rabbi Meir about the fact that it's not an Isser D'Oraisa. Okay, now the Gemara adds a halacha here. The Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer, in the end of the brisa, says that you're only allowed to carry the spice packet or the flask if there's stuff in it. If it's empty, you're not allowed to carry it, even though it apparently still contains good aromas because it's left inside, but if it's empty, you're not allowed to wear it. That would be carrying the flask. So Gemara says, this is interesting. Adavar Ava says, we once had a discussion, what happens if you carry a container with less than the minimum amount of food in it that is needed to make one violating the Isser of carrying. If you carry a speck, you're not violating the Isser D'Oraisa. You have to be carrying a minimum amount. So what if you're carrying less than the minimum amount, but it's in a container? So do we say it's less than a minimum amount so you're not Chayav D'Oraisa, or do we say that you're carrying the container, which is large enough? Now, the reasoning that you shouldn't be liable, you shouldn't be guilty of the Isser D'Oraisa for carrying the container is that the container is only there to serve the food. So if the food itself is not significant enough to be carrying, the container has no greater significance than the food it's carrying. It's just there to serve the food. So but here you see that this spice thing is empty, and you're still violating the halacha by carrying it, even though it probably has a few specks on the side stuck to the wall, and it's there to carry that. So Gemara says, Rav Ashi says, no, you cannot prove from this that the container is significant, even if it's carrying less than a shear. Because when it's carrying less than a shear, less than the minimum amount, it's still serving what it is carrying. And therefore, it is insignificant. But in this case, it is significant because it's empty. It's not serving anything. It is just serving its own purpose. It's totally empty. The fact that it still has aromas in it doesn't count for anything. Okay, now having mentioned the aromatic oils, the Gemara discusses them in an entirely different context, which is how they were involved in the behavior of people which led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and what they were involved with after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. This will take us into an entire discussion of what people were doing leading up to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and what their punishments were. The Gemara will quote several psukim which define them, and the Gemara will explain the psukim bit by bit. The first parts talk about the sins of the women, and then tomorrow in the Daf Samach Gimel we'll discuss the sins of the men. So first of all, the Gemara says that the pasuk in the Navi Amos tells us that people were not listening to the Nevi'im, and they were engaging in luxurious activities. One of those luxurious activities were V'reishis Shemanim Yimshachu. They anointed themselves with fine oil. So Gemara says this was this aromatic oil which is made from afar simon. So Gemara says that it's not true. That was not the oil that they used. There's nothing that's wrong with that. And the proof is that after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Chachamim made a decree that you're not allowed to use any luxuries in order to mourn the Beis Hamikdash, and they certainly would have used anything that was part of the Psukim describing what they did before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Yet, about anointing with oils is a machlokes. Machlokes between Rav Yehuda ben Baba and the Chachamim said it's okay to use the oil. So obviously that's not what they were doing before the Beis Hamikdash. They would have said that it was forbidden. So Abai says to Rav Yosef that can't be. You can't be, because I'll prove to you there was something else that clearly is listed in the pasuk that they did before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, which was a luxury that led up to it, and yet it wasn't forbidden afterwards, and that was drinking from something called Mizrikei Yayin, or using Mizrikei Yayin. Mizrikei Yayin literally means throwing the wine, which Rav Ami and Rav Asi explained. One it means that they used a special kind of cup called Kinishkinin, which had two openings that two people could drink at once, so it threw the wine. And the other one is that they had a sport where they juggled full cups of wine and they threw them to each other. It was a special skill. Either way, drinking from the Kinishkinin is not a problem, even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, as we know, because Rav Abai Rav Huna once went to the Reish Galuza's Suda, and they drank from this thing, and Rav Huna didn't say anything. So you see, it's not a problem to drink from these Kinishkinin even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, yet it was listed as one of the things that they did before the Beis Hamikdash. Obviously, the restrictions after the destruction had nothing to do with this pasuk describing things before, so you have no proof that it wasn't balsam oil, it wasn't the afar simon oil that they used before. So Abaye says, what is it that we restricted afterwards? Not the things that were listed in that pasuk necessarily, but anything which brought both physical pleasure and joy, as opposed to this oil which didn't bring joy, it was just physical pleasure, and therefore it's not forbidden afterward. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the psukim which describe what people used to do, and the Gemara explains what they were. So the next thing that it says there is Hasheichman al mita is shein usruchim al arasaysom. They lie on beds of ivory, and they made the beds disgusting. So Gemara says, what does it mean that they made the beds disgusting? It means that when they woke up and they needed to use the bathroom, they were too lazy to get out of bed, and they just urinated on the floor. The Maharsha will say later that also includes urinating anywhere in the house. It's all not appropriate and it's all disgusting. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Abba says that can't be the pshat, because right afterwards it says that because of this they will be the first ones to go into exile. The fact that they urinated on the floor while they were still lying in bed undressed, that may be disgusting. It's not enough to send one into exile at the head of the pack. But it means that they made their beds disgusting means that they used to eat together with other people, and they would sleep together with other people, and they exchanged their wives, and therefore the beds became disgusting with other people's bodily fluids. Okay, now the Gemara says a little bit about people who urinate from the bed. The Gemara says that there are three things that make a person be poor. They are, number one, if he urinates undressed from the bed or near the bed. The other one is if he doesn't wash his hands properly for bread. And the third one, if he is cursed by his wife in his presence to his face. So the Gemara describes these one by one. Rava says urinating from the bed is only a problem if he's facing the bed, if he's facing away from the bed, or into a kli, which catches it, it's not on the ground, so it won't cause poverty. Not necessarily advised, but it won't cause that. Washing the hands, Rava said, it's only a problem if he doesn't wash at all. If he washes just not with a full amount of water, not with a revius, it's not a problem. On that, Rav Chisda argues and he says, no, I used to wash my hands with a lot of water, and in reward for that I got a lot of stuff and became very rich. And now the Gemara says the third thing is that if she curses him, that's only if it's his problem, meaning she was upset that he didn't buy her anything and he could have afforded to. If he couldn't afford it, so then it will not cause a poverty for them. Okay, now the Gemara goes to discuss what the women in the times of the Beis Hamikdash used to do, which was involved in their destruction, and what their punishments were. And we'll describe the psukim one by one. So it says, Vayemar Hashem Yanki Gavu B'nai Tzion. The daughters of Tzion are haughty. That means that they walked in a outstretched, erect way to entice others. Then it says, Vatelachna Tuyo is Garan with outstretched necks. That means that they walked in a particular sashaying fashion which was enticing to others. This is referring to married women, by the way. Then it says, Masakre Seinayim. The Gemara says that is to be understood as a sikra. They wore special makeup that would entice people. And halach v'tafayf, they floated as they walked. It means that they would have a tall woman walk near a short one, so that the taller one would seem to be floating. Beraglei and ta'achasna, their feet had achas. The Gemara understands this as aros, meaning venom, snake venom. The Gemara says what they did was they put spices like myrrh and a farsamon in their shoes, and then they would walk right near men in the street, and they would stomp hard. That would cause the perfume to spray over them and drive the Yetzer Hara into the men like venom, like snake venom. That's why it says that they had venom in their feet. Okay, now what is the punishment that they got? So the pasuk says, it says, V'haya tachas b'osem makia. Instead of fragrance, they'll have decay. That the places which they perfumed themselves were filled with decay. Next, v'tachas chagar nikva. Instead of the belt, they'll have bruises. The place where they wore the belts, they got bruised. V'tachas ma'isa miksha karcha. Instead of jewelry, they had baldness. We understand this as ma'isa miksha. We read as miskashtos, meaning the places where they put on a lot of jewelry, meaning the hair would become bald. Next, it says tachas psigil machlei resak. Psigil, the Gemara understands as psachim gil, the openings of happiness, referring to the private region. And the Gemara says instead of being functional, it'll be covered with a sackcloth. And then it says kisachas yefi, instead of beauty, people will have sores, as it says chilufei shufra kiva. People often use that expression. Okay. Next it says v'sipach Hashem kodkei b'nei Tzion. This is a pasuk in Yeshaya elsewhere. V'sipach Hashem kodkei b'nei Tzion. V'sipach is from the word sapachas, which is a type of tzaras, where it says that they got tzaras. Hashem plus ehim yar. Hashem will cause their openings to pour. Mahok is what that means. Rav says it means that their blood flow from the Makam Erva was unusual. It was very much. And the other side is that they had a lot of hair there, which made activity very painful for them. Okay, we'll end that there. Now the Gemara will pick up the discussion as to what the men did and how their punishments were served.